another edition of Outside the Shop with me, your host, Daryl D. Lane, as always, where I get to talk about everything that I normally don't get a chance to talk about in my regular sports podcast, Barbershop Sports Talk, which you guys can all find on Spotify, iTunes, Stitcher, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, iHeartRadio, SoundCloud, wherever you get your podcasts from. Gonna have a great show for you guys today. We're gonna have a lot of stuff. Before we get into all of that, right? Check on the description below, a little clip that's on the YouTube channel. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, by the way. And it is about 2 minutes how the Buccaneers improve after losing to the Los Angeles Rams in a potential rematch. We saw how Tampa was able to win the rematch against the Saints and win again against another rematch against the Packers in the playoffs last year. If it comes down to that, it's the NFC Championship game, Rams versus Bucs. What can they do differently to change the score of the game? 2-minute vid, well worth your time. So here's what we have. Cowboys versus Eagles, Monday Night Football. Dominant win for the Dallas Cowboys, 41-21. The balance that they had on offense was amazing last year. Before Dak Prescott got hurt, one of the biggest issues was they had no balance. They were very Dak dependent. Even years before, they were Ezekiel Elliott dependent. They had a really good balance, a really good feng shui, really good harmony, yin and yang. And they actually ran it way more, but it was all efficient too. So 26 pass rushes. When you're doing that, you're ahead of the sticks. You can use play action. You're the deep is on their heels. They don't know what's coming. The run to the pass, it just makes everything a lot easier. I believe it was 21 of 26. Super efficient day throwing the football, folks. Dak Prescott is back. And my takeaway from this from the Cowboys is this. The Cowboys are a legit threat. Like, I'm not going to say I think they're going to NFC. I think that's a little bit too far for all of us to say. But they have a top 10 quarterback in Dak Prescott. They have a top 10 running game with solid offensive line, Elliott, Tony Pollard. They have a bevy of weapons at the wide receiver position with CeeDee Lamb, Callaway, Amari Cooper, right? And the defense seems to be good enough, right? They blew out the Eagles, which I was shocked. They had a very close, narrow loss to the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, so I think a lot of people think as a contender. They were right there to beat Tampa Bay, right? With Dak Prescott's first game in months, they were right there to beat Tampa Bay. So the Cowboys are legit. I think they've clearly separated themselves from the NFC East. I think everybody should be picking them to win the division now pretty clearly, and I think they're going to do that by a couple of games. And I think they're a team that you don't want to play in the postseason. I think they've at least shown us that to this point. So I want to go to the Eagles. Jalen Hurts was not very impressive throwing the football. He had 2 interceptions, also had 2 touchdowns. He threw for 300 yards, but there were a lot of passes that he was missing. I think at the end of the day, Jalen Hurts is not the guy for Philadelphia. He's a great leader. There's a place for him. You can maybe even use him like I use a Taysom Hill, how the New Orleans Saints use a Taysom Hill. But Jalen Hurts cannot be your franchise quarterback. That is my biggest takeaway from the Philadelphia Eagles perspective. So I want to give my NFL power rankings, my top 10 NFL power rankings. So at number 10, I have the Baltimore Ravens. They went down because rough win against the Detroit Lions. Talked about that yesterday. 67-yard field goal to beat the Lions. That's not cutting it. That moves them down. 49ers, they lost to the Packers. I'm still a little unsold on Jimmy Garoppolo. Cardinals, they're 3-0, but the game against the Jaguars was a little bit in doubt. They found a way to win, but I'm going to have them at 8. At 7, I'm going to have the Green Bay Packers. I still have them here because had a semi-competitive game with the Lions. They got blown out by the Saints. Really good win against the Niners, but I need to see more before I can move them up. At 6, the Carolina Panthers, they are undefeated. Their defense is one of the best in the NFL. I know they don't have Christian McCaffrey, but they still got a bevy of weapons. At number 5, I have the Kansas City Chiefs. They have record, but they still have the best quarterback in the NFL. Their offense is still explosive, and if they can just fix their defense, I think they will be fine. Number 4, I have the Cleveland Browns. They are 2-1 on the season. They dispatched the Chicago Bears pretty easily. They found a way to win against the Texans. Their only losses to the Kansas City Chiefs, who many people think can be a Super Bowl team, right? They've won the AFC the last 2 years, so not a bad loss. Good resume there. Number 3, the Oakland Raiders. They're undefeated. They have 3 really good wins against the Ravens in overtime. The Pittsburgh Steelers went, not looking as good now. And the Dolphins, a team that was a 10-win team last year. So against solid teams, especially on defense, all solid teams that can beat you any given Sunday. They are 3-0. They don't think a lot of people thought they'd be 3-0. Derek Carr is playing his best football of his career right now with John Gruden. They're 3. Number 2, the Buffalo Bills. Folks, listen, the Buffalo Bills blew out the Washington football team and the Miami Dolphins. And and didn't play their apex game while doing it. Also, what you need to realize is the Dolphins won 10 games last year, like I just said. Washington was in the playoffs last year. They blew out a 10-win team at a team that was in the playoffs last year. They had one bad game against the Pittsburgh Steelers where the offensive play calling was absolute crap. But besides that, they have been great, and it seems like they can keep pulling. They are clearly number one in the AFC right now. And at number one, the Los Angeles Rams. They beat the Tampa Bay Buccaneers. And with the when it comes to with the Rams, I have the Rams at 1 because obviously Tampa Bay, the Super Bowl champions, Matthew Stafford, Sean McVay, the way their offense was humming, just very impressive, and they have a good resume, right? Spares pretty. We're dominating the Colts. The Colts kind of came back towards the end. As I'm actually looking at this, there was a slight mistake. The Buccaneers were not on here, so let's just do this. Let's put the Buccaneers all the way. Let's put the Buccaneers at 3. I'll put the Buccaneers at 3. So let's admit this will be top 11, right? Baltimore, you got to slide out. So number 3 is going to be the Buccaneers. So again, these are my top 10/11 teams for the power rankings. Number 1, LA Rams. Number 2, Buffalo Bills. Number 3, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. Number 4, the Raiders. Number 5, the Browns. Number 6, the Chiefs. Number 7, the Panthers. Number 8, the Packers. Number 9, the Cardinals. And number 10, the Niners. And number 11, just on the outskirts of the top 10, the Baltimore Ravens. So now I'm going to get into this, the college football playoff committee, the people who are making these decisions for the college football playoff expansion. They're going to be meeting, I believe, today, right? Because it's Tuesday. And they believe that a deal will get done to expand the playoffs. I'm not a huge fan of this, but it seems like it's going to happen. I think that it end up being 8 teams. Could be wrong. Could be 12. I've heard people say 6 should be a good number. I wouldn't necessarily mind 6, but I think we're heading towards 8. But what would be a shocker if it ends up there is no expansion? They just keep it at 4 like they should. Because really, college football was never broken. The BCS was fine. The best team always got in. We've seen there be blowouts many a times in the college football playoffs. It just works better to have 2 teams, maybe 4 at the most, but there's only so many teams who can actually compete any given year. And if you move it to 8 teams, you move to 12 teams, then we're going to start getting a bunch of teams that have no shot of winning in, which to me makes no sense. Now, lastly, Ben Simmons says he no longer wants to play with Joel Embiid. Sam Amick of The Athletic says that Simmons believes that the style of play doesn't mesh with Embiid, who is a dominant force for Philadelphia in the paint. There's always been a lot of talk about Embiid and Simmons not getting along. I think this is finally coming to a head right before our eyes here and now. Simmons is done. He did not want any of his Sixers teammates coming out to LA to talk to him. Joel Embiid basically kind of set the turning point of the game. And last year in the playoffs against the Hawks was when Ben Simmons decides to pass it out instead of dunking it. I believe also I've listened to somebody was talking about how he was like, well, I meant that at the time, being honest. Obviously, they're not fond of each other, and you don't have to be besties, right? If you're on a team together, if you're a colleague, but it helps the work environment when you're close and you're hanging out. I mean, it helps with chemistry to be super close, but as long as you have a professional work environment, it doesn't seem like they have a professional work environment and even really mutual respect. It doesn't seem like they're too fond of each other. It's like, bro, keep your distance. So I think that kind of seals the deal, right? Ben Simmons is probably not coming back to Philadelphia, and that's all we have for this edition of Outside the Shop. Like, comment, and subscribe, and have a good day.